Hanagaki Takemichi is an average freelancer who ends up becoming the captain of a gang division. And no, I'm not talking about Peaky Blinders. He lived a very unsatisfying life right up to the point he died, and in an unexplainable way, he wakes up 12 years in the past and tries to right everything that went wrong and save everybody. The show begins with our protagonist, Takemichi, and his gang surrounded by another gang. Takemichi, who has the ability to travel through time, relates to us that this gang, Tenjiku, is not present in the past. Suddenly, a guy named Teta Kisaki walks up to them and introduces himself as the former captain of Tokyo Manji Gang's 3rd Division, who is now the General Staff Officer of Yokohama's Tenjiku. You'd think these are US military ranks with how they sound. Takemichi looks visibly shocked and asks him if he joined this group as soon as he left his previous one, Toman. Kisaki tells him he's going to build his own Toman. Honestly, I couldn't even understand half of what this dude was talking about, and neither could Takemichi. Another gang member named Hanma pulls up on a bike and tells Kisaki that they have to go. After Kisaki leaves, a Chinese-looking gang member, Mochizuku, comes dragging Chifuyu, a member of Toman, and throws him to the floor. This Jackie Chan-looking person tells the other members of the gang that he heard they're brawling Toman's 2nd Division in Shinjuku, and he's headed there. So they should make sure these guys can't cause any trouble again. He tells them to crush Toman before a guy named Kakucho shows up. These guys all surround Takemichi and his gang, and are about to give them the beating of a lifetime when suddenly 2 bikes start ramming into them. It's the Meguro Twin Devils, Smiley and Angry, 4th Division's captain and vice captain, and as their aliases imply, one is always smiling and one is always angry. Chifuyu wakes up at this point, and the twins want to go raid Yokohama, so they tell Takemichi and Chifuyu to hop on their bikes. Now, despite the fact that these guys look battered, they still want to fight. This is why my mother told me never to join gangs. On their way, the twins laugh at Chifuyu for losing to Mochizuku, and then tell him that he shouldn't feel bad because Mochizuku mopped the floor with their asses as well. They then meet some Tenjiku members on the way, and the twins say they want to ask some questions to find out the location of the hideout. Takemichi then tells Chifuyu that he saw Kisaki, and he feels he's the one who planned this attack. He also mentions that he thinks he's figured out something that has been bothering him for a while. He questions why no matter how many times he changes the present, the future remains the same. He then comes to a conclusion that there's probably someone who can also travel through time to make changes to what he has already changed, and he thinks that person is Kisaki. The realization of this infuriates Takemichi, who promises to make Kisaki pay if it turns out to be true. Chifuyu calms Takemichi down and tells him that if it's true that Kisaki can travel through time like Takemichi can, then Kisaki must be getting desperate seeing as he already did in the future, and this means he can't return to the future. It's at this point that the twins return and tell them that they've figured out the location. From the looks of these Tenjiku guys, it's clear that this was no peaceful question. We then see 2 people in an intense brawl, Mochizuku and Mitsuya. Mitsuya is then distracted by someone, and another person smashes a block on his head. We recognize them as the Haitiani brothers. Mochizuku is furious that they interfered with his fight, but they tell him it doesn't matter who took him down. They move away to continue with the attack plan, saying that they must finish it today. And we see the Tenjiku gang making their moves all over the place, even in public areas. They also ambush an unsuspecting member of Toman, who just happens to be passing by. Without a doubt, it's clear now how serious Tenjiku is. The twins, Meguro and Chifuyu, finally make it to the hideout, only to find out the Tenjiku gang has been waiting for them. And boy, if a fight is going to happen here, it is sure to be rough, because there are about 100 Tenjiku members here. Kakucho, a member of the Big Four, is also here, and it was at this point I discovered that Chifuyu has about 11 screws loose in his brain because he cracks his knuckles and is ready to fight. Is there even any sign of victory? Kakucho sends every single member of Tenjiku out of the place and tells the Toman guys he'll fight alone. Smiley says if he's fighting alone, then he'll also fight him alone. But Kakucho disagrees and says the first person he'd like to beat the shit out of is Toman Gang's 1st Division captain, Takemichi. Despite being weak, Takemichi agrees to fight him but begins to feel like he's seen this guy before. Takemichi rushes to the guy and knocks him out with one punch. Immediately, Takemichi recognizes Kakucho as his childhood friend who moved away in 2nd grade. Apparently, this badass member of Tenjiku used to take Takemichi as his hero, and obviously lost intentionally. Kakucho then inquires about Kisaki from Takemichi, and Takemichi tells him that Kisaki was kicked out of Toman for trying to take over the gang. Takemichi then asks Kakucho to help him meet Kisaki. There's something very important he needs to ask him. Kakucho tells him he's not obliged to help him because he has devoted his life to Tenjiku's leader, Izana Kurokawa, and as he's leaving the place, he tells Takemichi to beware of a traitor. Due to the fact that members of the Tokyo Manji gang are being attacked all over, an emergency meeting is called. And I must say, these guys look cool as hell in their uniform. They discuss the events and call out the powerhouses of the attack, mentioning Mochizuki, the Hachiani brothers, Madarame. These guys are part of the S62 generation, a powerful group of people who would never team up on a normal basis. Their leader, Mikey, riles up the gang by telling them they won't get beaten again, and that they're going to invade Yokohama. Takemichi has a bad feeling about this, and Shifuyu advises him to go back to the future and confirm this bad feeling he has. Takemichi is seen running and ends up in front of a door. He mentions he'll be back as often as possible to change the future. That's when this sweet-looking girl, who Takemichi calls Hina, shows up. She asks Takemichi if he's still fighting, and Takemichi tells her he's always losing. Takemichi goes back in time and relates all the happenings to this fellow called Naoto. But seeing Takemichi with yellow hair makes me feel like this black hair was a mistake. We want yellow. Naoto tells Takemichi he doesn't really know what Kisaki's current goal in the past is because, although in the past, Kisaki used Tenjiku to take over Toman, in the present, the police have no record of Tenjiku anymore, and Kisaki is dead. That's when Takemichi notices Izana, and Naoto tells him that he used to be the leader of Black Dragon. Takemichi absolutely disagrees and tells him that Izana is the leader of Tenjiku. This makes Naoto decide to investigate him even more, and Takemichi has to do some investigation of his own. They both hope they can end it this time for real. Takemichi sets out to find former members of Black Dragon, Inupi and Koko, since they weren't on the list of dead people Naoto compiled. He heads to a church, and while he becomes confused and angry at the fact that things aren't always working out no matter what he does, it's been 12 years since then. He stopped Yuzuha from killing Taiju. The Black Dragons fell under the 1st Division, and he even managed to kick Kisaki out of Toman, but still, the future didn't get better. In fact, it got worse, and he screams out in annoyance and makes a scene in the church. And that's when he meets Taiju Shiba, the leader of the 10th generation Black Dragons. He immediately tells him he'd like to ask some questions about Izana and the Black Dragons, knowing this man is a survivor who knows about Toman's past. He introduces Naoto to Taiju, and immediately Taiju takes them to a restaurant where they discuss. He tells them that normally he has no intention of cooperating with the cops, but since they killed Hakai, his brother, he has a grudge against them. He goes ahead to tell them that the leader of the 1st generation Black Dragons was Shinichiro Sano, Mikey's brother. The 8th generation leader was Izana Kurokawa, and he, Taiju, was the 10th generation leader. He tells them that Toman and Tenjiki combined to form the vilest gang, and that's when they reveal that Kisaki didn't actually die. Izana forged his death. At this point, Koko and Inupi walk into the bar and pick a fight, saying they want to capture the traitor who's leaking information to the police. Things get heated. Taiju shoots insults at Koko and Inupi, and then asks Takemichi and Naoto to escape through the back, and he fights these guys alone. Alright, no jokes, Taiju can throw a punch. Takemichi and Naoto run away, but a few meters before Takemichi, in all his stupidity, decides he has to go back to ask Koko and Inupi some questions. As he turns and starts running, a gun shows up from the alley, and guess who's wielding it? None other than Kisaki. He shoots at Takemichi, but in just that split second, Naoto pushes him and takes his place, and the bullet hits Naoto, who falls to the floor bleeding out to death. Another figure emerges from the shadows, Izana, and he instructs Kakucho to put a bullet in Takemichi. Unrelated, but the guys in this anime have extremely long necks. Kakucho hesitates only slightly, but ends up shooting Takemichi, and he also falls to the floor and starts bleeding out. This is bad. Takemichi is dying, Naoto is dying, and he still hasn't figured out everything he wanted to. In their dying breath, Takemichi goes back in time again and quickly calls young Naoto out. He just has to see him. As soon as he sees him, he holds Naoto's hands and tries again to go back to the future, but he can't. Naoto is dead in the future, and so is he. He is so confused and destabilized that he starts crying, and after a while, he apologizes to Naoto for calling him out and tells him to go back home. The time is past 2 a.m., and Takemichi notices that Naoto is still around. He then begins to vent about how they first met, how Hina died, how they tried to save her numerous times, how much they went through, and now he can't go to the future again. After talking for a while, he hears Hina's voice, and she tells him she loves him. Takemichi mistook Hina for Naoto and spilled everything. Hina asks Takemichi how old he is, and he says 26. She asked him if, in the future, Takemichi has proposed to her, and our boy freaks out and tells her he hasn't, but he has plans to do it. Hina smiles and tells him, now she can die happily. They stay together like that until morning, and Hina tells Takemichi she has to head home, and she goes, and now our boy is more pumped than ever. He decides he's going to go back in time as many times as possible to save everybody again. He runs into Draken, one of Toman's gang members, and he takes Takemichi to Mikey's house. They meet Takemichi eating breakfast, and he sends them to his room, which is outside the house. Draken tells Takemichi that it used to originally be a shed that Shinichiro, Mikey's brother, used to fix bikes. Mikey heads to the shed after breakfast, and he, Takemichi, and Draken engage in a conversation. Draken tells Takemichi that Shinichiro, Mikey's brother, was the founder of Black Dragon, and stupid Takemichi didn't act surprised when he was given that information, and this made Draken question him. Mikey reveals to us that he spoke to his brother before Toman fought against the 9th generation Black Dragons, and Shinichiro told him it was the 8th generation leader that ruined the gang. This leader we now know as Izana Kurokawa. Just then, Emma brings in some tea for the guys, and while they talk about Izana, she mentions that he is her elder brother, and this confuses the heavens out of all three of them and even me. She says Izana is her brother, and that makes Mikey and Izana step-siblings as well. Takemichi asks her if there's any other thing she can remember about Izana, and she tells them that Izana got along well with Shinichiro. Now this is another shock. She even goes ahead to bring a bunch of letters that Izana wrote to Shinichiro, and they all go through the letters one by one. Draken finds the very first letter, and it was about how happy Izana was to finally have someone to call family. Suddenly, Mikey stands up and says he wants to get air, and when he goes out, Draken picks up the letter. He read what Mikey was reading before going out, and the letter was about Izana telling Shinichiro to stop telling him about Mijiro, otherwise known as Mikey. They begin to deduce that Izana might have been after Mikey all this while, and has finally created Tenjiku, just so he can take down Mikey once and for all. This is alarming news because they're both flesh and blood. Takemichi spills every single thing to Chifuyu, and I'm guessing these two are closer than I thought. He tells him that this time around he wants to end it by killing Kisaki and Izana. He tells Chifuyu that he wants to do this alone, and Chifuyu disagrees with him. Chifuyu says that this sibling rivalry is at the center of Toman Gang, so Takemichi can't go alone. He needs to ask others what they want to do as well. The guys come in, and they still all have marks on their faces, but unanimously they agree to fight them. They say they can't allow Takemichi to do it alone. Once again, this is why my mother told me never to join any gang. Suddenly, a car pulls up, and a guy wearing Toman's gang uniform calls out to Takemichi. When he comes out and walks towards the window, he sees that it's Mochu, the 5th Division's captain. I'm sure I can't be the only one wondering if this is a gang thing or a football thing with all these divisions. The captain comes out and beats Takemichi like he's a 4-year-old until he passes out. Even I began to wonder what Takemichi did to deserve this. Then he instructs one of his men to dump Takemichi in the vehicle. When Takemichi finally opens his eyes, everywhere is dark and he can't see a thing. Then the captain turns on the lights and he sees Inupi and Koko. Takemichi wonders why he, Inupi, and Koko are here, and Mochu begins to tell them. He tells them that the 5th Division is assigned a special task. They are the only division allowed to do infighting, which is not allowed in the Toman Gang. He says he's the best fighter among the captains, and that's why Mikey gave him this special assignment. When he discovers a traitor, he's allowed to do anything he wants with them before finally handing them over to Mikey. Now this makes Takemichi wonder what he could have done to be treated as a traitor, and he asks. That's when Inupi begins to say that Mochu probably thinks they're the traitors because he was in the 8th generation of Black Dragons, and he was a close aide to Izana. And since it's Takemichi that brought them into the 1st Division, then he must be the mastermind. Inupi clears this up by saying, Takemichi is not the mastermind. For a fact, none of them there are traitors. That's when Mochu obliterates my feelings. He tells them they've got it all wrong. He didn't abduct them because they were traitors. He's close pals with Izana, and they met in reform school. To be exact, Mochu is a member of the S62 generation, and he wants Izana back on top as it used to be. And if we're to look at it more closely, Mochu was the only captain who wasn't attacked the day Tenjiku made their move. Mochu begins to tell Takemichi the reason why he abducted them. He tells him the reason they joined Takemichi's division was just so they won't get used again. And it's the same reason they joined up with the 10th leader of the Black Dragon, Taiju Shiba. He says that Inupi uses Taiju's power to rebuild the Black Dragon, and in return, Taiju recruited Koko into Black Dragon. He tells Takemichi that the reason Taiju recruited Koko into Black Dragon is because Koko is a money-making genius, and Taiju needed those skills. This makes Takemichi remember what happened when he went to the future, the part where Taiju called Koko Toman's wallet. Mochu then tells them that the only problem with Koko is that he only listens to Inupi, so he plans to kill Inupi and Takemichi, and then Koko will have no other choice than to join Tenjiku. He also disclosed that Izana isn't only after Mikey. He also needs Koko's money and Kisaki's brains to build the most powerful crime syndicate ever. Mochu says the members of the S-62 generation are now 18, and they have no time to be playing kiddies games like biker gangs. He then asks Koko to join them, and if he does, he'll let Inupi and Takemichi live. Koko was about to give up and say yes to save his comrades, but then Takemichi stood up and told Mochu he's not going to let him have Koko. Then this idiot proceeds to fight Mochu with his hands tied behind his back. For God's sake, this has to be anime's dumbest move of the week. Even on a normal day, maybe with 2 extra arms, he'd Pulsar still win the fight, but he's going against a member of the S-62 generation with his hands tied behind his back. Of course, he was beaten to oblivion. Inupi tries to have his back, but Mochu beats both of them simultaneously without even breaking a sweat. Koko can't handle it anymore, and finally agrees to do whatever Mochu asks. Takemichi and Inupi wake up in a dumping area and realize that Koko saved their asses. Inupi is too weak to walk, and Takemichi backs him. Takemichi tells Inupi that he's definitely going to get Koko back. Inupi asks how, and Takemichi says he doesn't know yet, but he's going to do it. Inupi tells Takemichi to drop him, and he takes Takemichi to his and Koko's hideout to patch up both their wounds. Inupi then begs Takemichi to be the 11th leader of Black Dragon and to save Koko. After a while, he begins to tell Takemichi that this hideout used to be Shinichiro's bike shop, and he told Takemichi all the stories he heard from his seniors then. He says that he wants to rebuild that first generation Black Dragon. He tells Takemichi that everything was bliss until the 8th generation, when Izana became the leader of the gang, and the gang became a vicious gang where anything goes. He got influenced by the gang and ended up in juvie, and by the time he got out, the gang had collapsed. It's why he wants to bring it back, and guess what? Takemichi tells him that he's going to be the leader of the gang. He'll bring Black Dragon back and still be the leader of the first division of Toman. That's our boy. Emma reflects on how her mother brings her to Sano Dojo and leaves, claiming she has to go somewhere far. She promises to return when done with business, but Emma senses it's not the real reason. Grandpa summons Shinichiro, Manjiro, and Emma, declaring them siblings. Manjiro humorously points out Emma's foreignness and receives a fitting knock on his head. Grandpa and the kids approach the training grounds, interrupting ongoing training. Shinichiro compliments Kisuki, and Grandpa calls out to Shinichiro, the mischief god who runs away. Grandpa tells Kisuki that Shinichiro never comes to practice, warning him not to be like him. Our attention is drawn to our Tai Chi master in the making, Manjiro, showing off his skills. Kisuki rushes over demanding a spar, but Manjiro refuses, stating he's there to show off and get attention. Kisuki notices Emma, asking who she is. Manjiro replies, saying she's his little sister. Kisuki picks up on Emma's foreign name. Manjiro agrees, and they both run around making insane jokes in an American accent. Emma sulks, noticed by Manjiro and Kisuki. She mutters that she knows why her mother left, thinking she hates her but promised to be back for her. Later that night, Manjiro eavesdrops on Shinichiro and Grandpa discussing how to make Emma happy. Manjiro goes to Emma, declaring that from that day, he'll be known as Mikey. Emma says she has never been lonely since that day. Mucho double-crossed us, huh? Takemichi agrees, saying the first division will do everything to rescue Hajime Kokonoi. Miki asks Inupi when Tenjiku would attack. He answers, the following day, February 22nd, an auspicious day for the Black Dragon's founding. Miki commands the troop rallied and ready for a showdown. Over at Tenjiku, Izana is definitely planning something diabolical, and Kakucho makes his disapproval known. Back at Toman's, The troops are rallied. Takemichi reminds Chifuyu that the 1st Division's goal is to rescue Kokonoi. Draken addresses his men, urging them to stay focused, noting Tenjiku does not fight fair. Hakai shouts that Tomen should fight dirty too. What's gotten into him? I wonder too. He proceeds to say that 2 captains were ambushed by Tenjiku and have been hospitalized. The men begin to rile up and are brought back to their senses by Payan. But he's not totally wrong. Who takes a knife to a gunfight? Mikey and Emma go to Shinichiro's grave to pay their respects. They find Inupi holding onto Izana's shirt, trying to punch him. Miki stops him, telling Takemichi to take Emma away. Emma goes to get a soda for herself and Takemichi. That's when I finally see the insanely evil plan Kakucho was against. They went ahead to do the unthinkable, hitting Emma on the head with a bat. As I'm telling you this, both Takemichi and I are stunned to the bone. They would go this far just to bring Mikey down? Now what even shocks me more is how Miki remains so cool. She's not even my sister, and I already lost it. Mickey carries Emma on his back, taking her to a hospital. He reminds her that the last time he gave her a piggy ride was when she fell while chasing him. She tells him if she doesn't make it, Mickey should tell Draken that she loves him. I'm still very much pissed about what Izana planned. Sorry, I had to stop and cry a little. Emma tells Takemichi to take care of Mikey for her, and she dies on Mikey's back. Mikey begins to fall apart. I hated Izana so much at this point. How could you even do that to your sister? Kisaki sits on a water tank atop a skyscraper, and Izana walks into the scene. I can't believe they'd start an episode with these two after what they just did. Seeing Kisaki's face makes me want to break his nose with a hockey stick. Izana tells Kisaki his double has been turned in. He shouldn't worry about being arrested. Kisaki says he knows Miki better than anyone. Izana asks Kisaki why he would take the risk of getting his hands dirty by killing Emma. Kisaki replies with a question, asking if he just killed his sister, and that's what Izana was worried about. Izana says Emma was not his sister. The 10 years he spent in a foster home, only Shinichiro came to visit. Only Shinichiro's love filled his empty heart, and he must kill everyone Shinichiro loved besides him. Talk about petty, psychopathic, and a cause for us to wave the LGBTQ flag. Draken is beyond shocked and devastated as he sees Emma lying lifeless on a bed in a hospital. Mikey sits, looking pale, resting on a wall just outside the ward where Emma's body lays. Takemichi comes out, sees Mikey, and sits next to him. Draken comes out of the ward and tells Mikey to come out for a minute. He asks Mikey what happened. Mikey remains silent. He asks again, but gives Mikey a punch, as if to remind him of the answer. Takemichi calls out to Draken from behind, falls on his knees, and tells Draken that he was the closest one to Emma, and he should hit him instead. But Draken continues to hit Mikey and yells at him. The men are ready for the showdown, but without their captain or their vice-captain, they can't engage. Chifuyu and 2 others try to contact the captain and the vice-captain, but to no avail. Just shortly after, Inupi shows up on his bike and says something bad has occurred. Back at the hospital, Takemichi tells Mikey that today's the showdown, and without him or the vice-captain to give the order, the people can't engage. Takemichi tells Mikey that Kisaki was the one who killed Emma, and knowing him, he would have used a cunning way to avoid being arrested. Takemichi makes up his mind to lead the Tomans to battle, but just as he's about to go, he sees Hina crying right in front of Emma's ward and tries to stop her from crying. Takemichi walks out of the hospital and sees Chifuyu waiting for him on his bike. Takemichi and Chifuyu go back to where the men are gathered, and he calls them to order, informing them that the leader's sister, Emma, is dead. The men begin to ask if the leader and the vice-captain are okay. The men discuss within themselves and decide not to fight today but wait until the captain and vice-captain are back. Takemichi encourages them to fight, but the men immediately disagree and leave simultaneously. Chifuyu tells Takemichi that he thought something like that would happen. Takemichi says the people are probably right, but he has made up his mind that even if he has to go alone, the fight must happen. As Takemichi and Chifuyu watch everyone leave, Akun steps up and says he'll follow too. Not just the 2 of them, he says at the top of his voice that it's always been this way, and the only person that never runs away is Takemichi. Everyone walking away stops in guilt. They begin to step back one after the other until the majority are back, saying they are ready to take on the Tenjiku with Takemichi and Chifuyu. Just as the people rally back together, the 2 hospitalized captains show up in wheelchairs and ask Takemichi to allow Angry and Hakai to fight too. Once again, this is why my mother asked me to avoid gangs. Chifuyu managed to rile up these guys. The men all shout and begin to chant Toman. Takemichi says to Chifuyu that he'll save Emma and Baji too. He doesn't know how, But if he could do something absurd like travel back in time, then nothing is impossible. But to achieve that, he has to defeat Tenjiku first. Honestly, I can't wait to see Izana and Kisaki given the proper beating they deserve. I wish I could join the Toman gang and stay at the back. Not to fight. My mum will kill me. Just stay at the back and look handsome. February 22nd, 9:55 p.m. at Yokohama's 7th Pier. Izana has rounded up the leaders of the 5 top hoodlum groups in Tokyo and has properly beaten them to a pulp. He calls them guests to witness the event. Kakucho informs Izana that it's already 10 p.m. The Tomans are not coming, Kakucho adds. Shion, one of Tenjiku's top 4, says that they've already absorbed Division 6 of Toman, and he has taken care of the captains of the 2nd and the 4th Division. They begin to gloat about how they use their cunning ways to break down the Tomans. Kisaki reassures them that the Tomans will come. Everywhere goes quiet. Alerted by the noise, everyone can tell that the Tomans are coming. Now that's more like it. My blood begins to boil at the impending fight we are all about to witness. The Tomans and the Tenjikus glare at each other. The air is more tense than the family dinner with my step-siblings. Most faces frowned and some with bright smirks. Kisaki welcomes Takemichi from atop the containers he's standing on and calls him a hero. The Tomans are overwhelmingly outnumbered. What are they going to do? Izana proposes they start with a vanguard fight. Shion steps up to take the vanguard fight and introduces himself as the former 9th generation Black Dragon leader and one of Tenjiku's Big 4. He asks, "Who are you sending out, Toman?" Obviously, we know the Tomans are short on top fighters. I'm beginning to wonder if this is a bad idea, or what plan do they have up their sleeves? Is there going to be a drastic turn of events? In delay to provide a fighter, Shion begins to mock the Tomans. They've been reduced to nothing, but we all know who's going to be the vanguard fighter. He steps up and says he's the only one fit to be the vanguard fighter. Just as he's about to move, Pei-Yan moves past Takemichi and tells Shion that he'll be facing him. Pei-Yan tells Takemichi that he's the acting leader today, and he should stay back. Pei-Yan introduces himself as the 3rd Division captain. Shion boasts of taking out the Tomans by himself. The Tenjikus hail Shion, saying he's bam. What just happened? Pei-Yan just knocked out Shion with a heavy, well-deserved, beautiful punch that enters my top 10 anime punches of the week. Takemichi's mind and mine have been blown away. It's over, just like that? Fear overwhelms Tenjiku's men. Pei-Yan tells Takemichi that it's up to him now to make the call. Takemichi strengthens his resolve within himself and calls the strike. Not gonna lie, the beginning of this fight is amazing. The Tomans, especially Angry, Hakai, and Pei-Yan, are beating the living daylight out of Tenjiku's men, painting the grounds of Tokyo with their blood. I know. I'm a little extreme, but I'm just so excited. The Tomans fight and pave the way for Takemichi, who out of nowhere now seems to be the leader. The Tomans are outnumbered. Fighting and making a way to Izana might take some time. We should call the Tomans the One-Punch Men because Tenjiku's men lay lifeless just after one hit from the Tomans. Pei-Yan is on a rampage. Unstoppable. Who is this beast? Then men of Tenjiku clan asks. Izana makes his way through his own men to challenge Pei-Yan. Pei-Yan charges towards Izana and is sent across the field with just a kick. Okay, wait. I knew this guy was strong. But this strong? We are sent to a scene where younger Izana bumbles a number of men with just his bare hands. His team stands behind him, and he tells them that the next time he meets with them, they should be more vicious. Back to the present, Izana walks up to his team called Vicious Generation and tells them it's their time. Takemichi is blocked by the Tenjiku fighter tagged Gorilla. This name makes me laugh my butt off. Members of the 1st Division surround Takemichi and prepare to fight. Chifuyu runs from behind and gives the gorilla a flying kick, telling the meathead gorilla that he's his opponent. The Vicious Generation moves out and pick out the strongest Toman fighters and face them. Kakucho asks Takemichi why they came to battle. Takemichi replies with a question, asking if he knew what was going to happen to Emma, and Kakucho said he did. Takemichi said he'll take back Kokonoi and kick Kisaki, Izana, and the Tenjiku's asses. Bold thing to say after seeing what Izana was capable of. Kakucho informs Takemichi that even if he wins the fight, he can't take Kokonoi back, because Kokonoi is the one who voluntarily joined Tenjiku. Inupi tells Kokonoi to come back to them, but Kokonoi apparently has become stupid overnight. He tells Inupi to join Tenjiku. Is he mad or something? Inupi tells Kokonoi that he should stop obsessing over Akane. Kokonoi is enraged and he grabs Inupi by the neck and lifts him up, Inupi grabs Kokonoi's hands and frees himself from Kokonoi's grip. Kokonoi kicks Inupi in the stomach and says he's only lived for money. We are taken to the past when Inupi and Kokonoi were just kids, about 10 years old. Kokonoi was in love with Akani, Inupi's elder sister, who was 5 years older than him. Akani invites Kokonoi to study at a library, but she was fast asleep. Kokonoi tries to steal a kiss, but she gently tells him not to kiss her, that he should only kiss the person he loves. Kokonoi expresses his feelings to Akani. She tells him she's 5 years older than him, but he counters her, saying that when they're older, that age difference won't matter. I mean, kids these days. Back when I was their age, the only thing I knew was Bible study. Akani thanks Kokonoi for walking her home. Kokonoi tells her he will love her forever and he will protect her always. Akani said to Kokonoi as she turns around and walks into her house. Kokonoi, who lives not too far away, gets home and sees a fire from across the block. He figures it's around Akani's home and rushes over. He runs into the burning building to save Akani and comes back with someone on his shoulder a few minutes later. He proved his love, but painfully he saved Sheishu and not Akani. He tries to rush back in to save Akani, but he's stopped by the fire department. Let the boy be a superhero, for God's sake. Akani and Sheishu are hospitalized, but Akani's condition is really bad. Kokonoi hears from Sheishu that it takes about 40 million to save Akani. Kokonoi goes in search for a way to make a lot of money, and falls into the line of crime, from small-time robbery to working dirty for rich men. Kokonoi receives a call one day, and he's told that Akani is dead. Heartbreak at such an age. This was so sad. I began to realize that this anime is a spiral of emotions. Like, how many painful deaths have we already witnessed? Back to the fight scene between Kokonoi and Inupi. They exchange punches and words until, alas, Kokonoi is on the floor. One of the vicious generation walks into the scene and challenges Inupi. Takemichi is punched to the floor by Kakucho, but he insists it's Kisaki he wants to fight. At the top of the container where they stand, Kisaki tells Izana that for a group who were on the verge of annihilation, Toman was sure holding their own very well against Tenjiku. Izana explains that when he was in juvie, he lost his temper, went berserk, and beat every last one of his inmates and guards. But there were a few dudes who wouldn't go down. He mentions that by chance, they were all 13 years old. That's the vicious generation. Maki's crime was obstruction of duty. He wiped out the clan that controlled Kawasaki all by himself, and beat the hell out of the cope that came too. Mucho's crime was assault. He beat up a has-been mixed martial artist using judo to break his spine. Izana continues by saying at that time, the biggest Tokyo gang was Roppongi Max Maniacs. The Haitani brothers fought the leaders one-on-one and won. He then states that Tenjiku has the vicious generation, that no matter how Toman struggles, it's useless. Not gonna lie, realizing that the majority of these guys are just teenagers sends an entirely different brand of shivers down my spine. Hakai and Angry are getting their asses kicked by the Haitani brothers. Their combo and synergy are just off the charts. After a good pounding, Haki and Angry decide to work hand in hand to defeat the Haitani brothers, calling themselves the Little Brother Alliance, and they charge in to attack the Haitani brothers. We see Little Angry crying, a bunch of beaten up seniors, and Little Smiley standing in their midst. Well, after what Izana did, I'm not shocked a child is capable of this. Dude calls out to Smiley and asks if he's spaced out. Smiley tells him about when Angry promised not to cry again. He tells him not to worry. Smiley agrees and stops to say something else. We see Angry and Hakai charge in on two vicious generation members, Rindo and Ran. Hakai is hit with the rod across the face by Ran. Angry was tackled, and his left leg was broken by Rindo. Rindo leaves Angry and decides to brutally torture Hakai with Ran, hitting him continuously on the head. Everyone stops in awe to watch. Smiley tells him that when Angry cries, he becomes a demon, 100 times stronger. Watching Hakai being brutally tortured, Angry falls to tears, and the vicious generation mocks him. Angry gets up in a mood Goku gets in whenever he's about to unlock a new level of Saiyan power. Angry limps with his broken leg. Rindo steps forward, and this fool tries to tackle Angry again and fails. Instead of the fool to back up from Angry, he stands there until he receives a knockout punch. Not two, not three, just one. Just as we recover from the shock of our newborn One Punch Man, he flash steps behind Ran and Wam. He is knocked out. The gorilla comes forth and also follows suit in the One Punch receiving community. This sends everyone into a state of shock, both the Tomans and the Tenjikus. Hocho steps up as if he's going to put an end to the newborn One Punch Man era, but nothing for the bloody bastard. He tries to sumo slam Angry, but Angry maneuvers mid-air and takes out Mucho in one hit. The Tomans, with zeal in their hearts and fire in their bones, come together, declaring that they're going to win this showdown. Mucho is pissed, and like the sore loser he is, who does not know when to stop, he gets up and brings out a blade and charges towards the Tomans, saying it has not ended yet. Kakucho ends Mucho's madness with one punch. Honestly, we have so many one-punch men in this anime. Saitama might need to battle for his position. Kakucho clearly tells Takemichi that he is not on his side. Kakucho slams through all of Toman, starting with Angry, who just obliterated these guys. He clears them all with one punch. This makes everyone present shudder in fear. Just what sort of a beast is this guy? Now, it's Kakucho versus Takemichi, childhood friends now on opposite teams. Yes, Takemichi is the man I should support, but my money is on Kakucho to give him the beating of his life. Takemichi wants to bring up small talk, but Kakucho isn't even interested in that and gives Takemichi a blow. He keeps raining blows on him, but Takemichi is one very stubborn he-goat. He is beaten so badly, but still, he isn't relenting. He isn't giving up. He isn't giving in. To hell with this, he is even still teasing Kakucho. Despite the massive beating, this guy manages to remain on his feet. Kakucho might have muscle power, but Takemichi definitely had mouth power because this guy just keeps on spewing talk instead of fighting. Well, it seems to be working, because Kakucho is now talking back instead of also fighting. Takemichi tries to seize the opportunity to give him a punch, but he is quickly reminded with a returning punch that he is too weak. The way Kakucho beats this boy gives me bad memories of what my mother did to me when I was growing up. I wasn't the model child, but it's safe to say that my mother only beat me twice. The remaining 47 times were attempted murder. No jokes. Kakucho might have sent Takemichi to the great beyond, but Chifuyu decided to step up at this point and tell Takemichi to give it up, saying Toman has already lost. Takemichi's spirit is not broken. He shouts out that Toman isn't going to Losi. Izana urges Kakucho to end this fight, but Takemichi knows that Kakucho would not kill him. He mouths it to Izana that Kakucho doesn't have the determination to win even if it means dying. This triggered all sorts of emotions among the guys, and Kisaki walks up to Takemichi, and oh my god, is that a gun? This insane human being brings out a gun and points it at Takemichi, asking him if he has the determination to win even if it means dying. With a gun pointed at his head, Takemichi stands still and strong and doesn't even look fazed. Kisaki looks a bit bothered by the fact that Takemichi doesn't even seem to be flinching at this point. Takemichi has flashbacks of all the people who have entrusted their wills and dreams to him, and gains an enormous amount of courage. I don't know if I should call it courage or stupidity, because he asks Kisaki what he is afraid of, and this statement infuriates Kisaki, so he shoots Takemichi in the foot. It would seem like Takemichi is on an everlasting supply of adrenaline because he still has the guts to tell Kisaki that shooting him in the foot won't kill him. Takemichi still manages to stand up and begins to spill a lot of shit about never giving up. This speech drove fear into the hearts of everyone present, and Kisaki says he is going to kill him, and Takemichi and his eternal stupidity walk right up to the gun. Okay, now Kisaki isn't even sure of what to do at this point, and he gives Takemichi a blow which sends him spinning to the floor. He walks to him and picks him up, and then something incredible happens. All the members of Toman who were initially on the floor begin to get up. It would seem as if another worldly power had enveloped them, because just mere seconds ago, they were all down with no hope of getting up. It's crazy if you ask me. Takemichi single-handedly gave them the ginger they needed to fight this fight. Everyone in Toman gets up, and this makes even him question Izana's motives. Kaiseki begins to mumble more and more rubbish about how they are never going to win this, and the highest they would do would be to combine both gangs and let Mikey be the leader. Honestly, I couldn't comprehend how Takemichi could keep up with that pain, but he walks up to Kisaki even though he is removing blood like a girl, experiencing her first period. He walks up to Kisaki and gives him a very beautiful blow that sends him to the floor, and he tells Kisaki he is not in the mood for compromise, and he tells Kisaki he is going to beat sense into that amazingly stupid brain of his. As Takemichi is about to strike, Izana steps up to block the blow from reaching Kisaki, and then hits Takemichi with a blow of his. This was dangerous. Each and every one of us knew that Izana was way stronger than Takemichi, and would beat him like a mother beating a young child. Takemichi rushes to him, but Izana sends him flying back with only a kick. Takemichi stands up again. What in heaven's name drags this boy? He rushes, he's kicked again. The ass whooping is the worst I have ever seen in my entire life. Takemichi still gets up, and he starts telling them how they drove Mikey mad in the future. But Takemichi was not making any sense to these guys. If, for anything, I think they were even more confused than when before he started talking. Izana doesn't relent. His mood changes, and he begins to beat Takemichi, who still refuses to give up or fall down. He rushes to give Izana a blow, but stops abruptly when he sees Mikey. Energy rushes through them all as Mikey steps into the ring. These guys are confused. Wasn't it just today that Mikey lost his sister? How could he be here already when he should be wallowing in despair? It's unbelievable. But Mikey shows up. He thanks Takemichi, and the next thing we see is Draken arriving on a bike with Hina. Okay, very unrelated, but I thought these guys were high schoolers. How is it that they have access to things like bikes and guns and even such amazing outfits? Then we see a flashback of where Hina was telling Mikey and Draken about how Takemichi actually came from the future to save all of them. And that's why he is so desperate. Takemichi is still in quite a shock after finding out that Hina told Mikey and Draken about his mission. And just then, Mikey blows my mind. He tells Izana's gang that they are so small to fight him. Mind you, Izana's gang reach a tally of 200. And guess what? Mikey tells them they'd need to be up to 2,000 to take him down. This is some extreme boss talk, and with the look in his eyes, Mikey definitely has the power to do this. Draken requests that everybody make some noise, and then Mikey tells them it's time to spill blood. Mikey then thanks Hina as they prepare to fight, and just as they were speaking, Izana rushes and gives Mikey a kick, which he skillfully blocks. Damn! What does this tell us? It tells us that the fight that is coming is going to be too intense. You won't be able to blink. Don't miss it! Thanks for watching, fellow weebs. If you enjoyed this recap, dive into the next video or playlist. And don't forget to check out our cool anime hoodies in the description below. See you in the next recap.